The morning that changed everything. The morning had begun like any other for Elaine Carter, a quiet ritual of brewing her favorite coffee and sitting by her window to reflect. The city buzzed with life outside, but Elaine had long since mastered finding stillness amidst the chaos. This day, however, was not like the others. It was a milestone, a celebration of triumph. After decades of grit, determination, and sacrifice, Elaine had achieved a lifelong dream. She was now the proud owner of one of the city's most prestigious luxury retail chains. For Elaine, this wasn't just about success. It was a culmination of a promise, a whisper from her childhood, etched into her soul. She vividly recalled standing outside high-end stores with her mother, marveling at the items they could never afford. Someday, her mother had said, "You'll have more than you could ever dream of." Those words had carried her through every challenge, every sleepless night, and every rejection. Now, as the new owner, Elaine wanted to visit one of her stores, not as the CEO, but as a customer. She deliberately dressed simply. A crisp white shirt, comfortable slacks, and her favorite leather bag. She chose no entourage, no announcements, no airs. Today, she was Elaine Carter, a woman revisiting a dream, not the high-powered businesswoman she had become. The encounter begins. The store was exquisite. The marble floors gleamed under the cascading light of crystal chandeliers. Shelves lined with meticulously crafted handbags, glittering jewelry, and elegant accessories evoked a sense of awe. Elaine walked through the aisles slowly, her fingers brushing against the displays as memories of her childhood admiration came flooding back. She stopped at a handbag she recognized from years ago, smiling at the journey it represented. But her reverie was short-lived. Across the store, Richard, the manager, watched her. His sharp eyes scanned her outfit, her demeanor, her every move. Something about her didn't sit right with him. Perhaps it was her simplicity or the fact that she didn't fit his mental image of the store's clientele. To him, she was an outsider, and his mind raced with assumptions. Richard approached her with a forced smile, one that failed to mask the judgment lurking underneath. "Good morning," he said, his voice dripping with insincere politeness. "Can I help you find something?" Elaine returned his smile warmly. "No, thank you. I'm just browsing." But Richard didn't leave. His gaze lingered, scrutinizing her every move. After a pause, he spoke again, his tone lower, almost conspiratorial. "You might want to check out some other stores," he said. "This one is, well, it's for a different kind of shopper." Elaine froze, her warm expression hardening. "A different kind," she repeated, her voice calm but laced with an edge. "What exactly do you mean?" Richard shrugged, his false smile fading into a smirk. "We cater to serious buyers here, not browsers." The confrontation. Elaine took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I see," she said, her tone steady. "And what makes you think I'm not serious?" Richard crossed his arms, his smirk widening. "I've been in this business a long time. I can tell who belongs here and who doesn't." Around them, the store fell silent. Customers who had been browsing now paused, their whispers buzzing like static. Some pulled out their phones, eager to capture the escalating confrontation. Elaine's heart pounded, but she refused to let it show. She straightened her shoulders and met Richard's gaze head-on. "I don't believe it's your job to decide who belongs and who doesn't," she said firmly. Richard scoffed. "Look, lady, I'm trying to be polite. If you don't leave, I'll have to call security." Nearby, a young sales associate named Tanya stood frozen behind the counter. Her hands gripped the edge tightly, her knuckles white. She had seen Richard behave this way before, but this time, something felt different. She wanted to intervene but feared the consequences. The theft unfolds. As the tension between Elaine and Richard mounted, another customer moved quietly through the store. Amanda, an impeccably dressed woman in her early 40s, exuded wealth and confidence. While Richard's focus remained on Elaine, Amanda's hands moved with practiced precision, slipping a diamond necklace into her bag. She glanced around, her expression calm and collected, before moving to another display and repeating the act. Elaine noticed Amanda's actions out of the corner of her eye. Her calm gaze lingered on the thief momentarily before returning to Richard, who was now red-faced with frustration. "If you don't leave now," Richard barked, his voice echoing through the store, "I'll call the police." Elaine tilted her head slightly, her expression unyielding. "Maybe you should," she replied, her voice as steady as ever. The turning point. Richard pulled out his phone and began dialing. "You've wasted enough of my time," he snapped. "I'll let the cops deal with you." Around them, the murmurs grew louder. Customers exchanged nervous glances, some recording the scene on their phones. Tanya's chest tightened as she debated whether to speak up. Fear and morality waged a silent war within her. Minutes later, the sound of heavy doors opening silenced the store. 2 police officers entered, their presence commanding immediate attention. Richard stepped forward, eager to assert his authority. "Officers," he began, gesturing toward Elaine. "This woman is causing a disturbance and refusing to leave. I believe she may escalate further." Elaine opened her mouth to respond, but one of the officers held up a hand. "Ma'am," he said firmly, "we're going to need you to step outside." Before she could comply, the doors swung open again. This time, a sleek black car pulled up just outside. 2 sharply dressed men entered first, their presence exuding authority. Behind them, a tall woman in a tailored suit strode in, her steps deliberate and commanding. The room fell into stunned silence as they approached Elaine. "Miss Carter," one of the men said warmly, "we're ready for the walkthrough." The reveal and redemption. The weight of the unfolding moment seemed to compress the air in the room. The tension, thick and unrelenting, gave way to an eerie silence as the impeccably dressed entourage approached Elaine. Their presence was magnetic. Sharp suits, polished shoes, and the quiet confidence of individuals accustomed to high-stakes environments. Every customer's gaze darted between Elaine, the new arrivals, and Richard, whose confident smirk was now faltering. The lead man, his tone respectful but firm, smiled at Elaine. "Apologies for the delay, Miss Carter. Are you ready for the walkthrough?" Elaine didn't answer immediately. She took a moment to compose herself, then turned to Richard. Her voice was steady and unyielding. "It seems there's been a misunderstanding," she said, the weight of her words hanging heavily in the air. "I am Elaine Carter, the new owner of this store." The silence was deafening. Richard's face drained of color. His jaw hung open, words stumbling over themselves in his throat, but no coherent sound emerged. The realization hit him like a freight train. He had been humiliating not just any customer, but his new boss. A reckoning in real time. Elaine let the revelation settle. The murmurs among the customers grew louder as their shock mirrored Richard's. Phones that had been discreetly recording the altercation were now fixed on her, their owners eager to capture every word. "I came here today," Elaine continued, her voice calm but cutting, "not as an executive, not as the head of this chain, but as a customer, one who wanted to quietly admire the business I've worked so hard to acquire. Instead, I've been met with judgment, assumptions, and blatant disrespect." Richard's hands trembled as he tried to interject. I didn't know," he stammered, his arrogance melting into desperation. Elaine held up a hand, silencing him. "That's precisely the problem," she said, her tone sharpening. "You didn't bother to know. You didn't ask questions. You didn't exercise basic decency. Instead, you relied on prejudice and made assumptions about who I am and what I'm capable of." Nearby, Tanya, the young sales associate, stood frozen. Her knuckles were still white from gripping the counter, but now her expression shifted to one of quiet awe. Seeing Elaine command the room with such grace and authority stirred something in her, something she hadn't felt in years working under Richard's oppressive leadership: hope. The thief unmasked. Just as Elaine was about to continue, she shifted her gaze toward Amanda. the well-dressed customer who had been inching toward the exit. "Before we proceed any further," Elaine said, her voice slicing through the room like a blade, "I think we should address another matter." Amanda stiffened, her hand frozen on the glass door's handle. "Me?" she asked, her voice faltering as every eye in the room turned toward her. "Yes, you," Elaine replied, her calm demeanor unyielding. "Would you mind opening your bag? I believe we'd all like to ensure everything in it belongs to you." A gasp rippled through the crowd. Amanda's face flushed as she clutched her bag tightly to her side. I don't know what you're talking about," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Elaine didn't waver. "I saw you take that necklace and bracelet. The security cameras will confirm it. Or perhaps you'd like to explain yourself now." The two police officers, who had initially been called to remove Elaine, turned their attention to Amanda. One of them stepped forward. "Ma'am," the officer said, his voice firm, "please open your bag." Amanda hesitated, her face crumbling under the weight of the moment. Slowly, she unzipped her bag, revealing the stolen items. The officer carefully removed them, his expression neutral but professional. "Looks like we got a theft on our hands," he said, turning to Richard. "And you were too busy harassing your new boss to notice." Lessons in leadership. Elaine took a deep breath, her eyes sweeping over the room. "This situation is a perfect example of what happens when we judge people by appearances, and not by their character or actions," she said, addressing everyone. "Amanda walked in here dressed the part, and she was treated like royalty, even while committing a crime. I, on the other hand, came in dressed simply, and I was humiliated for it. This isn't just about me. This is about how we treat each other as human beings." Tanya, emboldened by Elaine's words, stepped forward. "Miss Carter," she said hesitantly, her voice trembling, "I've worked here for 2 years, and this isn't the first time something like this has happened. Richard often judges customers by how they look. I've seen it so many times, but I've been too afraid to say anything." Elaine turned to Tanya, her expression softening. "Thank you for your honesty," she said warmly. "It takes courage to speak up, and I want you to know that your voice matters." Richard, who had remained silent and pale throughout the exchange, finally found his voice. "Miss Carter, I deeply regret." Elaine cut him off. "Save your apologies," she said, her tone firm but composed. "Actions speak louder than words. Effective immediately, you're relieved of your position. This store, and every store under my ownership, will be run with respect, fairness, and dignity. That starts today." A new beginning. The crowd erupted into applause, the tension dissipating as relief and admiration filled the room. Elaine turned back to the officers. "Thank you for your time," she said, nodding toward Amanda. "Please ensure the stolen items are returned and that she's held accountable." As the officers escorted Amanda out, Elaine addressed the remaining customers and staff. "This is a lesson for all of us," she said. "We are more than what we wear, where we come from, or what others assume about us. My mother taught me to dream big, but she also taught me the importance of treating every person with kindness and respect. That's the legacy I intend to build here." Tanya, inspired and hopeful, stepped closer. "Miss Carter," she said timidly, "does that mean things will change for employees too?" Elaine smiled. "Absolutely. You and every other employee deserve to work in an environment that values and respects you. I'll be conducting a full review of our management practices and ensuring that this chain becomes a model of excellence, not just in luxury, but in humanity." The journey continues. As Elaine walked through the store for her long-awaited tour, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just about owning a business. It was about creating a legacy. The whispers of admiration from customers and the gratitude shining in Tanya's eyes reminded her why she had worked so hard to get here. That day, Elaine Carter didn't just claim ownership of a store. She claimed ownership of her story. And in doing so, she inspired everyone who witnessed it to believe in the power of dignity, perseverance, and justice. Building a legacy of change. Elaine stood in the store, her calm yet commanding presence radiating a sense of justice. The customers had dispersed, and the tension that had once filled the air had been replaced by an electrifying sense of change. Richard had been escorted out, his arrogance replaced with a humble silence, and Amanda had been taken into police custody. The store, once buzzing with judgment and prejudice, now felt like a blank slate, a canvas on which Elaine intended to paint a brighter, more inclusive future. Tanya, the young sales associate who had bravely spoken up, lingered near the counter, watching Elaine with a mix of admiration and cautious hope. It was the first time in years that she had seen a leader stand for something meaningful. She wasn't sure what was coming next, but for the first time, she dared to believe it might be something good. A vision for the future. Elaine gathered the remaining staff in the store's lounge, a sleek and modern space designed for luxury, but lacking the warmth of camaraderie. Tanya, a few other sales associates, and the assistant manager shuffled in hesitantly. Exchanging glances, Elaine stood at the front, her posture relaxed, but her eyes sharp, scanning each face with intention. "I know today has been intense," Elaine began, her voice steady but warm. "But sometimes, intensity is what we need to spark real change. What happened out there today isn't just about me, and it's not just about Richard or Amanda. It's about all of us, how we see each other, how we treat each other, and how we allow ourselves to be treated." Tanya raised her hand timidly. "Miss Carter," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "do you really mean what you said about changing how things work here?" Elaine smiled, nodding. "Absolutely. I didn't acquire this business to uphold outdated systems. I acquired it to create something better. But I can't do it alone. Change requires all of us." The room fell silent, but it was a thoughtful, expectant silence. Elaine continued, her tone growing more resolute. "From this day forward, we're implementing a new set of values that prioritize respect, dignity, and opportunity. That means training programs to ensure every employee feels empowered and confident in their role. That means fostering an environment where customers are valued for who they are, not for how they look or how much they spend. And that also means holding everyone accountable, including myself." The staff exchanged glances, their expressions softening. The assistant manager, an older gentleman named Mark, spoke up. "I've been in this business for decades," he said slowly, "and I've never seen a leader address these issues head-on. If you're serious about this, Miss Carter, you've got my full support." Tanya's redemption. As the meeting wrapped up, Elaine approached Tanya. "You showed incredible courage today," Elaine said, her voice filled with genuine appreciation. "That's not something I take lightly." Tanya flushed, her cheeks reddening. "I was scared," she admitted. "Richard, he made it so hard to speak up. But when I saw what he was doing to you, I couldn't stay silent anymore." Elaine placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's doing what's right despite it. You did exactly that, and I want you to know that your voice matters here. If you ever feel something isn't right, come to me directly." Tanya's eyes welled up with tears. "Thank you," she said softly. "I won't let you down." Reaching the community. Elaine's vision extended beyond the store. Over the next few weeks, she launched a company-wide initiative aimed at creating a more inclusive and supportive culture. She invited experts in diversity and inclusion to conduct workshops, revamped hiring practices to ensure opportunities for underrepresented groups, and introduced community outreach programs to connect with customers from all walks of life. One of her boldest moves was transforming the store's image. She replaced outdated advertisements featuring impossibly perfect models with campaigns that celebrated real people, individuals from diverse backgrounds, shapes, sizes, and stories. The store's social media accounts exploded with engagement as customers and followers embraced the refreshing authenticity. Elaine also made it a point to visit other branches of the chain, ensuring that her message reached every corner of her empire. She didn't come with fanfare or announcements. She came as she had that fateful day, quietly and humbly, observing and engaging with employees and customers alike. Her presence became a symbol of hope and transformation. An unexpected reunion. Months later, Elaine received an unexpected letter. It was from Richard, the former manager who had been fired that fateful day. The letter was handwritten, the script uneven, as if written with a shaky hand. "Dear Miss Carter," it began, "I don't expect forgiveness, but I feel compelled to share this with you. Losing my job was a wake-up call, one I desperately needed. I've spent these months reflecting on my actions, and I've realized how deeply ingrained my biases were. I've sought counseling and have started attending workshops to unlearn the prejudices I didn't even realize I carried. It's a long road, but I'm committed to becoming a better person." Elaine read the letter twice, her emotions swirling. She didn't excuse his behavior, but she couldn't ignore the sincerity in his words. It reminded her of something her mother used to say: "Everyone has the capacity to grow if they're willing to face the truth." The grand reopening. A year later, the store where it all began held a grand reopening. Customers, employees, and community leaders gathered to celebrate the transformation. The store's once intimidating aura had been replaced with warmth and inclusivity. The new layout featured an open design that invited exploration, with interactive displays showcasing the craftsmanship behind each product. Elaine stood at the front, addressing the crowd. "This store is more than just a place to shop," she said, her voice carrying the weight of her journey. "It's a place where everyone is welcome. It's a symbol of resilience, growth, and the belief that change is always possible." As the crowd erupted into applause, Tanya, now promoted to a managerial role, stood nearby, beaming with pride. She had become a testament to the very change Elaine had envisioned. A reminder that when given a chance, people can rise above challenges and thrive. The legacy lives on. Elaine's story didn't end there. Her journey became a beacon of hope for others, inspiring countless individuals to stand up against prejudice and fight for fairness. Through her leadership, she proved that success isn't just measured by profit margins, but by the impact one has on people's lives. Years later, as Elaine sat in her office, overlooking the bustling city, she thought of her mother's words. "Someday, you'll have more than you could ever dream of." She smiled softly. It wasn't the wealth or the prestige that fulfilled her. It was the knowledge that she had turned her mother's dream into something far greater. A legacy of kindness, courage, and change. The ripple effect. Months after the grand reopening, Elaine's influence began to ripple beyond the walls of her store. The changes she implemented sparked conversations across the retail industry. Competitors, media outlets, and social justice organizations took note of her groundbreaking leadership. What had started as a response to an act of prejudice had evolved into a movement, one that challenged the status quo and inspired a deeper reckoning with systemic biases in the business world. Elaine wasn't just running a chain of luxury stores anymore. She was reshaping an industry. Her story became the centerpiece of interviews, panels, and conferences, but she remained grounded, always deflecting credit to the team she had built and the lessons she had learned along the way. A new partnership. Elaine's next big step was forging partnerships with local artisans and entrepreneurs from underrepresented communities. She believed that luxury could also mean authenticity, and that real craftsmanship wasn't limited to the established brands that dominated the market. Through these partnerships, Elaine launched a new collection called Legacy, featuring items crafted by small-scale artisans. Each piece came with a story, a glimpse into the lives of those who had created it. A handmade bracelet carried the story of a refugee who had rebuilt her life through jewelry making. A leather bag bore the tale of a craftsman whose designs celebrated his indigenous heritage. The collection was a massive success, not just in terms of sales, but also in the way it resonated with customers. People felt a deeper connection to the items they purchased, knowing their money was supporting meaningful causes. Elaine had transformed her stores into more than retail spaces. They had become platforms for celebrating diversity, creativity, and resilience. The unexpected visitor. One afternoon, as Elaine reviewed proposals for an upcoming initiative, her assistant knocked on the door. "Miss Carter, there's someone here to see you," they said hesitantly. "He doesn't have an appointment, but he insists it's important." Elaine frowned slightly but nodded. "Send him in." The door opened, and Richard stepped inside. He looked markedly different from the arrogant manager who had humiliated her months earlier. His tailored suit was replaced with simple slacks and a button-down shirt. His posture, once brimming with overconfidence, was now humble. He held a small, neatly wrapped package in his hands. "Miss Carter," Richard began, his voice quieter than Elaine remembered. I wasn't sure if you'd see me, but I needed to thank you." Elaine leaned back in her chair, studying him carefully. "Thank me? For what?" Richard swallowed hard, his grip tightening on the package. "For firing me," he said, his voice trembling. "It forced me to take a hard look at myself. I've spent these months trying to understand how I became the person I was that day. I've taken courses, joined workshops, and even started volunteering with organizations that work to combat bias." Elaine listened, her expression unreadable. Richard continued, his voice thick with emotion. "I know I can't undo what I did, but I want you to know that I'm committed to being better. And," he placed the package on her desk, "I made this for you." Elaine hesitated, then unwrapped the package. Inside was a leather-bound journal, intricately embossed with a design that mirrored the Legacy Collection's aesthetic. It was beautiful, but what caught her attention was the note tucked inside. "To Miss Carter, for teaching me that it's never too late to change. Thank you for inspiring me to find a better path. Richard." Elaine closed the journal, her gaze meeting Richard's. "I appreciate this," she said slowly. "But what matters more is what you do next. Words and gestures are important, but change is measured by action." Richard nodded. "I understand, and I promise I'll keep working." Mentorship and growth. Elaine decided to expand her impact by launching a mentorship program for aspiring leaders within her company. The program focused not only on professional development, but also on cultivating emotional intelligence, cultural competency, and ethical leadership. Tanya, now one of the youngest managers in the company, became a key figure in the program. She shared her story of speaking up, inspiring others to find their voice. Under Elaine's guidance, Tanya flourished, becoming a confident and compassionate leader who exemplified the values Elaine had worked so hard to instill. "I used to think I was just a cog in the machine," Tanya said during one of the mentorship sessions. "But Miss Carter showed me that I have the power to change the way things work, not just for myself, but for everyone I work with." Elaine's mentorship program didn't stop at her company. She partnered with universities and nonprofits to extend the initiative to young people from underserved communities. Through scholarships, internships, and leadership workshops, Elaine was helping to build a pipeline of diverse talent that would reshape the corporate world. The industry takes notice. Elaine's transformation of her stores and her leadership philosophy soon attracted the attention of major industry players. Competitors who had once dismissed her as a newcomer now sought her advice. She was invited to speak at global conferences, where she shared her vision for a more inclusive and compassionate business model. At one such conference, Elaine delivered a keynote speech titled "Redefining Success: Building Empathy into Enterprise." Her words resonated deeply, inspiring CEOs and entrepreneurs to rethink their practices. She challenged them to see beyond profits and to measure success by the impact they had on their employees, customers, and communities. "Luxury," she said during her speech, "isn't just about exclusivity. True luxury is the ability to uplift, to inspire, and to connect. It's about creating something meaningful, something that leaves the world a little better than you found it." A legacy of transformation. As the years passed, Elaine's story became a case study in business schools, a testament to the power of integrity and vision. Her stores thrived, not just because of the products they sold, but because of the culture she had cultivated. Customers felt a sense of belonging, employees felt valued, and communities felt supported. Elaine often reflected on her journey, from standing outside luxury store windows as a child to owning an empire that had redefined what luxury could mean. Her mother's words continued to echo in her heart, a constant reminder of the values that had guided her every step of the way. One evening, as she walked through one of her flagship stores, she saw a young girl standing with her mother, gazing at a display. The girl's eyes sparkled with wonder, and Elaine couldn't help but smile. She walked over and crouched beside the child. "Do you like that bag?" Elaine asked gently. The girl nodded, her eyes wide. "It's so pretty," she whispered. Elaine placed a hand on the girl's shoulder. "Someday," she said, echoing her mother's words, "you'll have more than you could ever dream of." And in that moment, Elaine knew her legacy was more than secure. It was alive, thriving, and inspiring others to dream bigger and reach higher. Planting seeds of a global movement. Elaine's transformative journey had turned her luxury chain into more than a business. It was now a global symbol of integrity and inclusion. But Elaine knew that true impact wasn't confined to the boundaries of her stores. She wanted to ignite a global movement, one that reached far beyond retail and reshaped industries, communities, and lives. The birth of the Global Initiative. Inspired by the overwhelming response to her company's reforms, Elaine launched a global initiative called Equity in Excellence, IA. The mission was simple but ambitious: to dismantle systemic biases in business and create opportunities for underserved communities to thrive in competitive industries. II was structured around three core pillars: education, partnering with universities and vocational programs to provide scholarships and hands-on training in business, craftsmanship, and leadership; empowerment, creating incubator programs for underrepresented entrepreneurs, offering mentorship, seed funding, and access to global markets; inclusion, hosting international summits where industry leaders could collaborate on strategies to foster diversity, equity, and inclusion in their fields. Elaine's flagship store became the headquarters for IA, its top floor transformed into a dynamic hub for workshops, brainstorming sessions, and community gatherings. The space buzzed with energy as people from all walks of life came together to share ideas, solve problems, and celebrate their successes. Stories of impact. As IA gained momentum, stories began to emerge. Stories of lives transformed by the opportunities Elaine's initiative had created. One such story was that of Luis Mendoza, a young man from a rural village in South America who had always dreamed of becoming a fashion designer. Through an EIE scholarship, Luis was able to study at a prestigious design school and eventually launch his own sustainable clothing line. His creations, inspired by the vibrant textiles of his heritage, quickly gained international recognition. "I never thought someone like me could make it in this industry," Luis said during an interview. "But I believed in me, and now I get to share my culture with the world." Another success story came from Sofia Nguyen, a single mother from a low-income neighborhood who had a passion for jewelry making. With IA's support, Sofia attended business workshops and received mentorship to turn her hobby into a thriving online business. Today, her handcrafted pieces are featured in several high-end stores, including Elaine's. "Miss Carter's program didn't just change my life," Sofia said. "It gave my son a future I never thought I could provide." Challenges and resistance. Of course, not everyone embraced Elaine's vision. Critics accused her of politicizing business, claiming her emphasis on equity was a distraction from profitability. Some investors questioned whether her focus on social impact would dilute the brand's luxury appeal. Elaine met these challenges head-on. In interviews and shareholder meetings, she laid out the undeniable success of her approach: increased customer loyalty, a surge in employee satisfaction, and record-breaking profits that proved ethics and excellence could coexist. Luxury isn't just about material wealth. Elaine said during a heated debate at an industry conference. It's about values. And today's consumers are more discerning than ever. They want to know that their purchases align with their beliefs. If we can't evolve, we'll be left behind. Her conviction silenced many critics, but Elaine knew that changing minds took time. She remained steadfast, using every obstacle as fuel to drive her mission forward. The Elaine Carter Fellowship. To ensure her work would continue long after her tenure, Elaine established the Elaine Carter Fellowship. The fellowship was designed to nurture the next generation of ethical leaders, providing young visionaries with the resources, mentorship, and platforms they needed to create change in their communities. The inaugural cohort of fellows included a diverse group of individuals from around the globe, a tech entrepreneur from Kenya developing apps for rural education, an environmental activist from India creating biodegradable packaging solutions, and a social worker from the United States advocating for fair housing policies. Each fellow brought unique perspectives and ideas, embodying the spirit of innovation and inclusivity that Elaine had championed. A personal milestone. Despite her public success, Elaine remained deeply connected to her personal journey. One evening, as she prepared for the EIA International Summit, she found herself reflecting on her childhood. She pulled out a small photo album her mother had given her years ago. Inside were pictures of the two of them, standing outside luxury stores, their faces filled with wonder and quiet longing. Elaine's eyes lingered on one photo in particular. It showed her younger self, no older than 10, pointing at a handbag in a store window while her mother smiled beside her. That handbag was now displayed prominently in her office, a reminder of how far she had come. "You were right, Mom," Elaine whispered, her voice soft but steady. "We've come so much further than I ever dreamed." The summit that changed everything. The first AIA International Summit was a spectacle of inspiration. Held in an expansive conference center adorned with art from the Legacy Collection, the event attracted attendees from every corner of the globe. Panels covered topics ranging from ethical supply chains to the intersection of technology and inclusivity. Keynote speakers included thought leaders, activists, and even former critics who had since become allies of Elaine's mission. Elaine's closing address was the highlight of the summit. Standing on stage before thousands of attendees, she shared her vision for a world where businesses weren't just engines of profit, but forces for good. "Each of us has a choice," she said, her voice resonating through the hall. "We can accept the world as it is, or we can work to create the world as it should be. My journey began with a simple dream, a dream to belong. Today, that dream has evolved into a responsibility, one I share with all of you. Together, we can create a legacy of equity, compassion, and excellence. And that legacy will outlast us all." The crowd erupted into a standing ovation, the energy in the room palpable. Tears glistened in Elaine's eyes as she took it all in. For the first time in years, she felt the magnitude of her work, not as a weight, but as a gift. A legacy for the ages. As Elaine walked off the stage, she was met by Tanya, now a senior executive at the company, and a group of young mentees from the fellowship program. They surrounded her with gratitude and admiration, eager to share their latest ideas and achievements. Elaine smiled, embracing each of them. In their eyes, she saw the future she had worked so hard to build, a future where success wasn't confined to a privileged few, but was accessible to anyone with the vision and determination to reach for it. Her work was far from over, but Elaine knew that the seed she had planted would continue to grow, nourished by the values she had fought to uphold. And as she looked out at the bustling city skyline that evening, she felt an unshakable sense of peace. She had created more than an empire. She had created a movement. And that movement would live on, long after her name was just a line in the history books. The Global Awakening. Elaine Carter's movement, Equity in Excellence, IIE, had grown into a worldwide phenomenon. The ripple effects of her work reached industries far beyond luxury retail, sparking a cultural awakening. But Elaine knew that with progress came resistance, and the next phase of her journey would require even more determination, diplomacy, and vision. The power of collective change. I's success was undeniable. Across the globe, businesses were adopting the initiative's framework, tailoring it to fit their industries. Tech companies introduced mentorship programs for marginalized communities, manufacturers developed ethical supply chains, and schools incorporated equity training into their curriculums. Elaine's network of allies expanded as leaders from various sectors joined the movement. One such ally was Dr. Camara Otino, a renowned economist who had dedicated her career to addressing systemic poverty. Together, they co-launched the Equity Fund, a global investment platform aimed at supporting small businesses in underserved regions. "I've seen how access to resources can change lives," Dr. Otino said at the fund's launch event. "What Elaine and I are building is more than financial support. It's a commitment to creating sustainable opportunities." The Equity Fund quickly became a game changer, funding ventures like renewable energy projects in remote areas, innovative healthcare solutions, and digital learning platforms for rural schools. Each investment carried Elaine's core philosophy, empowering individuals to rise above systemic barriers and thrive. The rising tide of resistance. But with the movement's rapid growth came heightened scrutiny. Critics accused Elaine of overstepping boundaries, claiming her initiatives placed undue pressure on businesses to prioritize social impact over profitability. A coalition of traditionalist CEOs penned an open letter, arguing that activism has no place in enterprise. Elaine responded with her characteristic composure during a live interview. "Activism and enterprise are not mutually exclusive," she said. "In fact, they're interconnected. A business that uplifts its people and the communities it serves is not just profitable, it's sustainable. The world is evolving, and businesses must evolve with it." The backlash intensified, with social media debates polarizing audiences. Hashtags like #KeepBusinessNeutral trended alongside #EquityandExcellence, illustrating the divide. Yet Elaine refused to be discouraged. Instead, she leaned into the resistance, viewing it as an opportunity to engage in meaningful dialogue. A journey of reflection. Amid the external noise, Elaine took a rare moment for herself. She traveled back to her hometown, a place she hadn't visited in years. The streets, though familiar, felt different now. The small house where she had grown up stood weathered but resilient, much like her mother had been. Elaine walked to the park where she and her mother used to sit on summer evenings, dreaming of a better life. She sat on the same worn bench, letting the memories wash over her. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind. "Dreams are just the beginning. The real work is in making them come true." Tears welled in Elaine's eyes as she realized how much of her journey had been shaped by those simple words. Her mother's legacy wasn't just the encouragement she had given. It was the strength she had instilled, the belief that resilience could overcome even the greatest obstacles. The Summit of Leaders. The following month, Elaine hosted the first ever Global Leaders Summit for Equity, inviting heads of state, CEOs, activists, and cultural icons to participate in a week-long series of discussions, workshops, and collaborations. The event was unprecedented, uniting people from vastly different backgrounds to tackle systemic issues head-on. One of the most powerful moments came during a panel discussion titled "Breaking Barriers: Stories of Resilience." Panelists included a formerly incarcerated chef who had started a successful restaurant chain, a refugee-turned-tech entrepreneur, and a single mother who had pioneered a childcare cooperative. Their stories moved the audience to tears, reminding everyone of the human potential often overlooked in rigid systems. Elaine delivered the closing address, her voice steady yet impassioned. "This summit is proof of what's possible when we work together," she said. "We've built bridges where there were once walls. But this is just the beginning. The real test lies in our ability to sustain and expand this momentum. Change isn't a one-time act. It's a lifetime commitment." The summit ended with a pledge signed by all participants, a commitment to integrate equity and inclusion into their respective spheres of influence. The document, dubbed the Equity Accord, became a guiding framework for industries worldwide. Personal triumphs and tribulations. Elaine's journey wasn't without personal sacrifices. The relentless pace of her work often left her drained, and she struggled to maintain close relationships. Her longtime friend and confidant, Miriam, reminded her to prioritize self-care during one of their rare get-togethers. "You can't pour from an empty cup, Elaine," Miriam said, handing her a steaming cup of tea. "The world needs you, but you also need to take care of yourself." Elaine nodded, knowing her friend was right. She began to carve out moments of stillness, whether through journaling, walking in nature, or spending time mentoring young people who reminded her of her younger self. One such mentee, a bright teenager named Aliyah, reignited Elaine's passion. Aliyah dreamed of becoming an architect, but faced significant barriers due to her family's financial struggles. Elaine personally sponsored Aliyah's education, ensuring she had the resources to succeed. Watching Aliyah thrive brought Elaine a profound sense of fulfillment. The legacy takes root. As IE entered its 10th year, its impact was undeniable. Businesses that had adopted its principles reported record profits, increased employee retention, and stronger customer loyalty. Communities that once faced economic stagnation were now hubs of innovation and growth. Elaine's personal story became a source of inspiration for millions. Her speeches, books, and initiatives encouraged countless individuals to challenge the status quo and advocate for a more equitable world. Schools taught her journey as a lesson in resilience, compassion, and leadership. But Elaine remained humble. She often reminded herself and others that the movement wasn't about her. It was about the collective power of people working together to create change. A glimpse of the future. One evening, as Elaine prepared for bed, she received an email from Aliyah. Attached was a photo of a completed architectural project, a community center Aliyah had designed to serve low-income families. The email read, "Miss Carter, you taught me to dream big and to use my gifts to uplift others. This center is dedicated to you and to the millions of people you've inspired. Thank you for believing in me." Elaine stared at the photo, tears streaming down her face. In that moment, she knew that her work, the battles she had fought, the sacrifices she had made, had been worth it. The seeds she had planted were growing, their roots deep and their branches wide, touching lives she would never even know. Her mother's voice echoed once more in her heart. "Someday, you'll have more than you could ever dream of." Elaine smiled softly. That someday had come, and it was more beautiful than she could have ever imagined. A legacy fulfilled. Years passed, and Elaine Carter's name became synonymous with transformation. Her life's work, from equity in excellence, i.e., to her retail empire and beyond, had sparked a global movement that transcended her original vision. Yet Elaine remained as humble as the young girl who once gazed longingly at handbags through shop windows. As she entered her late 60s, Elaine decided it was time to step back from her daily responsibilities. She had spent decades pouring her heart and soul into her mission, and now she wanted to ensure that her legacy would endure long after her presence faded. The transition to the future. Elaine called a company-wide meeting, gathering employees, leaders, and partners in person and online. Standing on the stage of her flagship store, she addressed the people who had walked alongside her on this incredible journey. "It's time for me to pass the torch," Elaine said, her voice steady and warm. "The work we've done together has been extraordinary, but movements don't belong to any one person. They belong to the people who carry them forward." The crowd erupted in applause, but there were tears as well. Tanya, now a senior executive and one of Elaine's closest confidants, stepped forward. "You've shown us what's possible when we lead with vision and heart," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "We'll continue to honor your values and expand the work you've started." Elaine smiled, deeply moved. "I trust you all," she said, "because this isn't just my legacy, it's ours. A farewell celebration. Elaine's retirement was celebrated with an event unlike any other, a celebration of the lives her work had touched. Artisans whose crafts had been showcased in her stores shared their stories. Students from the mentorship programs gave heartfelt speeches. Entrepreneurs funded by the Equity Fund spoke of how Elaine's belief in them had changed the trajectory of their lives. One of the most poignant moments came when Alia, now a renowned architect, presented Elaine with a model of the community center she had designed. "This center isn't just a building," Alia said. "It's a symbol of what happens when someone believes in you. Miss Carter, you didn't just believe in me. You believed in all of us." A quiet life, a lasting legacy. Elaine retired to a modest home in the countryside, a place where she could reflect and reconnect with herself. She spent her days tending to a small garden, writing a memoir, and mentoring young leaders who often visited seeking her wisdom. Yet even in retirement, Elaine's influence continued to grow. Equity and excellence became a standard for ethical business practices worldwide. Universities named scholarships after her. Her memoir, A Legacy of Change, became a bestseller, inspiring readers to rise above adversity and lead with compassion. Occasionally, Elaine would receive letters from people whose lives had been touched by her work. One letter stood out. It came from a single mother who had started her own business through IA's funding program. The mother wrote, "Because of you, my children have a future. Because of you, I found my strength. Thank you for showing us what's possible." Elaine kept that letter framed on her desk. It reminded her that true success wasn't measured by wealth or accolades, but by the lives you touch and the change you create. The lesson of Elaine Carter. Elaine's life left behind a powerful lesson, that no one is defined by where they start. Through determination, vision, and compassion, she had turned her childhood dreams into a force for good, proving that adversity could be a foundation for greatness. She taught the world that business could be a catalyst for equity, that power should be wielded with humility, and that leadership required listening as much as acting. Elaine's legacy was a testament to the power of resilience and the importance of seeing others for who they truly are, not for who they appear to be. A world forever changed. As Elaine sat on her porch one quiet evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon, she felt an overwhelming sense of peace. Her mother's words echoed once more in her mind. "Someday, you'll have more than you could ever dream of." Elaine smiled, knowing those dreams had come true, not because of what she had gained, but because of what she had given. And as the stars began to dot the night sky, she whispered softly, "We did it, Mom. We really did." Final takeaway. Elaine Carter's story reminds us that the greatest impact we can have on the world comes from lifting others as we rise. Her journey teaches us to lead with empathy, to challenge prejudice, and to believe in the power of collective change. Her legacy proves that when we dare to dream and work tirelessly to bring those dreams to life, we can transform not just our own lives, but the lives of countless others. This concludes the story. Thank you for watching until the end. I hope you found it enjoyable. If you did, please consider liking the video and sharing it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and activate the notification bell for more captivating stories. Have a great day.